You're listening to a Roddenberry podcast.
Mission Log Prodigy, a Roddenberry Star Trek podcast. Episode 7. First Con-tact.
Welcome to another episode of Mission Log Prodigy, a Roddenberry Star Trek podcast. I'm Ashley Victoria Robinson.
And I'm Norman Lau. And just like our flagship Mission Log podcast, each week here on Mission Log Prodigy, we discuss every episode of this animated series. And I mean lovingly so. And discover what makes each of them special and see if there are any morals, meanings, or messages that we have learned.
This episode 7, First Contact or First Contact. More on that later. Hey. I didn't write that. It's a good joke. Please remember that Mission Log Prodigy is an in-depth review podcast. So what does that mean? If you have not yet seen First Contact, you might want to put us on pause. Hey, welcome back. So happy to have you.
Love to see you.
We were happy to wait. Norman was very gracious. He entertained me for the 30-some minutes that took you. You've watched the episode, and now come back here and listen to us talk all about it.
So for all of you who are joining us for the first time, or for even those of you who have been listening to us for a while, this show is produced for both YouTube and as a regular podcast. So be sure to engage the like button and subscribe to Mission Log Prodigy on the Roddenberry Entertainment YouTube channel. And please make sure to listen to podcasts.roddenberry.com. or Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, you know the drill, wherever you listen to your Roddenberry podcast. Oh, by the way, just for the YouTube audience only, because this is a visual gag and not an audio gag, a little hint on what may be going on. It is a mug of Quark's Bar. That's just a little teaser before we tease you with the next teaser.
You can also find jokes of this quality and interactions with Norman and I on our Mission Log Prodigy Twitter account at ML_Prodigy to keep up with all our latest news and updates. It's one of my favorite places on Twitter, so I'd really love it if you could come and join us there. And before we jump into the recap, here is why our podcast is so unique. We want to hear from you, especially from the younger yous, the little tiny adorable yous, the younger Prodigy fans out there. We would love to hear you share your thoughts on the show, so please send us a 1 to 2 minute voice message at missionlog-prodigy@roddenberry.com. That's missionlog-prodigy@roddenberry.com. And in your message, you've got to answer some questions. So there are these ones here. What is your first name and your age? Did you like the episode? What was your favorite part? And most importantly, what did you learn? And we always look forward to hearing your comments, which are featured at the end of the show. It's really, really fun to get to hear other people's insights. And to start things off, here are our answers to the exact same question. So Norm or Morn.
Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Did you like the episode?
I did. At first, I was a little kind of caught off guard. I didn't know where the story was going, but just like every other Prodigy episode, the more you watch it, the more like genius you find in it. So I have to be really careful with the bell curve that I'm setting for myself with this entire season of Prodigy. And then we have the second season, because if we keep starting off on such high marks for the show, what do we find for solid critiques, if any? That's a tough thing to find in these episodes, How about you?
That's very fair. I would say that I enjoyed most of the episode. This was the first episode where I felt like this was 2 or 3 episodes that, because of the overarching narrative of the season and the trajectory for the characters, I kind of felt like this was a couple different ideas crammed into one. I would have liked to see the 2 dueling plots explored separately before they converged like this. But that being said, I thought they were both interesting. I just wanted more time to spend with both of them. So it's a compliment.
A
I
compliment?
guess.
Hey, we can make up
Yeah.
words. When I interviewed the Hageman brothers, they were making up really good words, and we can make up really good words too.
I wrote some of them down when I was listening.
I'm glad that you brought that up, because I actually do feel like this in many ways is like a second part to Kobayashi, because
Tell me more.
a lot of the narrative threads kind of parallel their way into this episode. We'll get to that in a little bit, but I do think that I like what you said, that this is like several different parts of episodes that could have been explored, but I do think that there's a lot of it that is flowing from Kobayashi into this, and maybe this is going to flow out into the next episode because it is serialized.
That is really cool. And that is something that you see a lot in like Doctor Who, where stuff will sort of make sense 1 or 2 episodes down the line as the narrative kind of comes together. But
Exactly.
less Doctor Who talk, more Star Trek talk.
Yeah.
What was your favorite part of the episode?
Oh, I straight up cried when I saw the crystal not get just beamed out of Nandi's hands with the delta on it, but beamed back into where it was supposed to be. Because that was Dal saying, I need to make this right. This is how I'm making it right. Not just to steal it away from the person who stole it to begin with, but to show this species that the Federation cleans up after itself and fixes its mistakes.
Wow, nicely said. I think we're going to have a lot of crystal talk. I think this is suddenly going to become a woo-woo podcast, so we're going to talk a lot about crystals today. My favorite part was inside of the alien crystal chamber, where we hear the music and the song, and we sort of see the entity or the projection of the entity that represents who this species is. I thought having a species using nonverbal communication in an animated format, which is a visual medium and can kind of give life to things in a way that it's harder to do in live action. I thought it was so beautiful. It was such a smart thing to do on this episode. And we've talked extensively about how good the music is, but I was immediately like, I need this on my phone. I need this in the catalog. I will be returning to this, like some of the elf music from Lord of the Rings. It was like very that vibe for me.
Well, thank you, Nami, for all of that. And I wanted to kind of do another Lord of the Rings-esque kind of comparison here, because at the very beginning of J.R.R. Tolkien's The Silmarillion, there was a harmony until there was a discord, and there is a breaking of kind of like this musical cohesiveness that we saw on the bottom of this planet in this subchamber with all of this harmonic crystalline entity stuff. Also, the crystalline entity popped into my head from TNG.
But also Nachu evoking the Valor.
Thank you.
As we get into this episode. Okay, before we go deeper down that rabbit hole,
Yeah,
a lot of things for people who are not as seasoned as us to be Googling and getting into, though, for the references in this episode.
True.
Most important question, what did you learn from First Contact?
So my dad had a saying. He told me this when I was young, and kind of still resonates with me to this day. He said to me, "Show me who your friends are, and I will show you who you are." And that was Gwyn at the very, very end of this. And I don't want to steal too much away from kind of like my final thoughts, but also kind of like a little sub. What else did you learn from this episode? Always listen to Hologram Janeway. Period.
Yes.
And again,
Yes.
amen.
Amen. Here,
There we go.
Bart Simpson. Testify.
Testify. How about you, Ashley? The
That's
dad.
about as much as the tiki-talk as you're going to get.
Oh, you're such a sports baller.
Oh, yes, I am so good at the sports. How many football teams are there? I don't know.
But you know what you learned, though, at the end of this episode. What did you learn?
I did. I learned sort of in the repeating round robin theme that you don't have to share DNA to be family. We saw 2 examples of that. The positive example is Gwen and Dal's relationship. And I know you have a really interesting point about this later in your notes, so I don't want to get into it too much, but they share the sort of very similar origin, but also we get to see some of the icky parts of that as well. Like we know Gwen and the Diviner have a very dysfunctional, not positive relationship. And then Dal and his mother or his adopted mother have a similar kind of relationship, but while that's upsetting, that's also how family is.
Yeah.
So
That's a certain reality to things.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. I thought that somewhere along the line we were going to get a Moogie reference. I'm so sad that we didn't. Maybe we will later. Dal just kind of looks at Nandi and says Moogie.
I would have loved it, honestly. But she
Also,
called him a low bling, and that was pretty great.
Yeah, much low play in this. This I can say that this is G-rated episode. So
That's right. Absolutely.
Yeah, so we can talk about those things. They are in the canon. Speaking of in the canon, this is for posterity. Thank you so much, Ashley, for my questions, for your questions. And now let's get on to it. Let's get on to the recap.
Star Trek Prodigy Episode 7. First Contact is written by Deandra Pendleton Thompson, excellent name, directed by Steve In Chang-un and Sung Shin, and it is as follows. The episode opens with a captain's log delivered by Dal, and Star Trek fans go wild. All the crew on the bridge is learning how a transporter works by making floor pie. Super gross. Don't put floor pie in your mouth. Then testing it out on something organic, which is a logical leap, but they picked Murph, which is not the kindest thing to do, testing a potentially dangerous technology on one of your friends. But Rockjack says, I love you, Murph, which is like hands down, honestly, the best part of the episode. And then later tells him how handsome he is, which is like the second greatest part of the episode. So I guess it's all worth it in the end. But the worst thing that happens to Murph is that he gets stuck on the hull of the protostar. Everything's kind of okay in the end from the transporter front. I wondered if this was supposed to be a wink back to the Voyager crew having to explain everything to the new aliens. I don't know. It's probably just for the younger viewers who aren't familiar with transporters. Janeway then reports a distress signal from a woman with sick orphans in distress from a Ferengi ship called the Damsel. Great name. The ship belongs to Damon Nandi, who's basically Dal's adopted space mom. What is she doing in the Gamma Quadrant? It doesn't really matter because there's this happy reunion aboard the Damsel where Jankum finds a cloaking device that doesn't work, unfortunately, because it's powered by chimerium. Do you recognize that name? You should, because it is the very thing that all of our crew was mining for the Diviner when we first met them. Dal talks privately with Nandi, quotes the rules of acquisition, nice Ferengi references, and they trade the cloaking device, which the protostar is lacking, for a job, a first contact type of job. Nandi needs to pay off some Dabo debts and convinces Dal to help her lie to his crew and steal from the unsuspecting locals under the guise of diplomacy. Needless to say, Hollow Janeway isn't pleased. She attempts to explain to the young crew the prime directive and how delicate first contact is. But no one really listens to her because they're teenagers. Meanwhile, Zero gets to use their empathic abilities and act a lot like Deanna Troi here in the way that Norm and I predicted last week. So very good for us. Pats on the back. Sensing Dal's resistance to go through with this particular away mission, but those are kind of brushed aside. Once planetside first contact goes rough, the native species kicks up a sandstorm to express their displeasure. They think the protostar crew is here to attack until Gwyn suggests they humble themselves before the indigenous peoples. She then discovers they use harmonics to communicate in place of spoken language. A cave is presented and the crew approaches. Back on the protostar, Janeway looks over the footage, you know, that hollow footage that we've been seeing with Chakotay over and over and over again, and discovers what looks like Dreadnought lurking in the background? Question mark. Back inside the cave, the crew falls into a hole in the ground with a bunch of Reveille crystals, the very thing that Nandi wanted to retrieve in the first place. She presents the species representative, this cool kind of elfin, angel-looking being with precious metal from the stars, and demands a gift in return. In return, they're actually given a song, my favorite scene, and the trust of the species. Nandi is angered and begins ripping the crystals off of their hanging vines, harming these new beings and revealing that Dal had lied to his crew about the away mission's true purpose. The underground chamber continues to shudder and collapse in on each other as the crew puts the stolen crystals back while profusely apologizing. But Nandi has taken off with the last crystal. They can't fix everything. Above the ground again, Nandi and Dal grapple over the final crystal, and it's revealed that Nandi sold Dal to the Diviner in the first place. He wasn't captured. She gave him, and she accepted funds in return. She also stole the chimerium from the protostar to power her cloaking device. She takes off, abandoning Dal and the crew to their fate. But just when things are looking particularly dire, Dal is transported away by his crew. And luckily, he slapped his comm badge onto the final crystal, and once safely aboard, is able to save the crystal and get it back home the way he was saved by using a transporter, leaving a little tiny delta behind to mark their very first contact. Janeway lectures the crew on breaking the Prime Directive, damaging a species development, and losing her trust. Gwyn and Del bond over absentee parents, and they make a vow to grow and be better together. Then in the end, Nandi calls the diviner to tattle all that she knows about the protostar. The end.
I don't know about you out there, folks, but I can listen to Ashley do the recaps pretty much forever and a day. That was fantastic.
You gotta watch it for the gestures.
I know. So this is why you actually have to subscribe to the YouTube channel so you can watch. This is performance, the performance reading. This is dinner and a show if you're watching it for dinner. But
hey, Prodigy, are you casting season 2? What?
I think that it was fantastic. It was so energetic. It's hard to not be enthusiastic about an episode like this because there's so much going on with so much of just the layers, the treachery, the deceit. But you kind of know what's coming because Ferengi are involved. So
yes.
Let's jump into it.
Yes.
Right?
Oh, okay. Can we talk about Damon Nandi? Because
yeah, I think we should. For sure.
I love the Ferengi. I love powerful female Ferengi because of the way the species was set up. They've like grown and evolved a lot through our Deep Space Nine Easter eggs. And she's a great character. She is powerful. She is cool. She is smart. And mark my words, this is not the last time we will see her. She also poses a bunch of questions about Dal to me that don't really matter, but it's just like being a deep Star Trek nerd. Like Ferengi have served in the Federation for years. How come he didn't know what the Federation was? Ferengi ships have cloaking capabilities and transporter capabilities. How come he didn't know what a transporter was at the top of the episode? Now, that could definitely be me being too picky. Or it can tell us a lot about how he was raised, because he was raised with the bare minimum of knowledge that he needed.
Yeah, sheltered life. He was only told what he needed to be told, and that's move this crate over here, or sweep the floors. Or he lived in an engine room.
Under the engine, yeah. It was very Aladdin-esque in a lot of ways.
Looking through the porthole. Was that the window to the galaxy? I was like, maybe Dal
that's a really beautiful moment. I was like, kiss.
Maybe Dal has imagined more in his life than he's realized, to get him through the tougher times. Speaking of tougher times, we all know that the Federation is spread out, super thin, usually is everywhere, and definitely in the Gamma Quadrant. But I do love the fact that in the very beginning, Janeway says something to the line of, we're the only ship within 2 parsecs of the damsel's location. Of course, the Federation ship, the only ship in the quadrant, is the only one near them, and they're this far away, but no one else can get to them because they're the only ship in the quadrant. Very, very traditional Star Trek. I laughed when I heard that. I'm like, let me guess. They're the only ship that can get to them. There it is.
That's like some TOS level storytelling for sure.
You mentioned this in your recap, though, but damsel in distress, super genius.
Just so good. When they first said it, I thought they were referring to the then cloaked figure as being the damsel. And then when it was the ship name, I was like, yes. And then it was a Ferengi ship, like double yes. Yes.
Exactly.
Yes. So smart. But with all the Ferengi involvement, it also leads me to wonder, like, is Dal actually playing a long con? I don't actually think so because of the tone of the show, but
clutch the chimerium pearls.
I know, so delicate, such a delicate composition.
Yeah.
But is he a lot more knowledgeable than his sort of like proto-young James T. Kirk personality would lead us to believe? Like, did he know what a transporter was? Does he know what the Federation is? This is the first time where I kind of thought that he might not be exactly what he presented as. And I think that's very intriguing.
You never know. He could be playing. There's this really interesting thing that happens with stories like this. You're always kind of walking on eggshells, trying to figure out who's second guessing who, or who's trying to lead someone down a completely different narrative and playing kind of like the spy game, who's going to be able to figure out who and when and why, and the game is up and that kind of thing. So I guess we're going to have to see. Here's a bigger question, though. So there's a Klingon cloaking device that runs on chimerium. Okay, so did somebody like completely just salvage or cherry pick what happened to that Klingon bird of prey that we saw on Terra? on the Terror Planet? Because it seems like everything that comes off that ship got picked to the bones, right?
I mean, it's a good salvage. Like if you're gonna run into a busted up ship, like a Klingon ship, like a Klingon freighter or bird of prey, like that's one of the better. It's pretty much that or a warbird. If you're not going to get a Federation vessel in terms of like optimizing the technology that someone could have in a future series reference or utilize, the inclusion of the cloaking device also makes me wonder, how are there a lot more ships in this part of space than we've initially been led to believe? And
True enough.
They've been cloaked this entire time.
Looks like Camarium is kind of like the dilithium of this side of the galaxy.
I would love for Jankum or one of our engineering nerds to come on and be like, oh, it works like it sort of compare it to dilithium. Like, I want to know how they relate to each other.
Right. Exactly.
Like, which is better and why.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You wanted to talk about Damon Nandi a little bit. So Dal's first captain, mentor, mother. It says a lot. I mean, without actually having to go into Dal's background more explicitly from when we first saw him on Taras Lamora, it really speaks volumes of the motivations of his character. I'm just wondering if the audience now will probably maybe forgive him a little bit of his brusqueness, his cockiness, kind of like his attitude towards everything, knowing that he was raised by a Ferengi. What do you think? Interesting.
I think so. I think it explains a lot about his cockiness in particular. Also, him being a young male lead of an action-centric show.
Yeah, true.
Forgives a lot of that as well. But I like that they have bothered to give us an in-canon reason for why he's behaving in this headstrong way. But I have questions about other crew members, and I want you to weigh in on this.
All right.
Is Murph indestructible? Because yes, he's been eating, right? Like we love Murph eating everything, but we also saw Murph on the outside of the ship, which is a cute gag, right? We did it for the laughs, but that means that he can survive in the vacuum of space.
Yeah.
With no, sure, the shields or whatever, but where do the powers end? Like, he is low-key the most powerful member of the crew. I know there's going to be, I'm betting around episode 10, like a mid-season. There's going to be like the moment where we understand the true greatness that Murph possesses. But like, what is the power scale that we're playing with here now?
It's tough. And, each one of these like instances, again, it just kind of like adds layer upon layer upon layer of what is Murph capable of, and what will he be able to? He, she, we're not exactly sure. What will Murph? They are
using male pronouns for Murph.
They are,
which doesn't mean that won't change. But right now, we're using male pronouns for Murph.
Well, first, we thought Rot Talk was a he at one time.
For about the first 10 minutes of the show.
Started speaking. I guess I just, I'm just wondering if Murph won't be too much of a, what's the word? Kind of like a Deus Ex Machina type character, because giving any character this many abilities, indestructibility, being able to like be the character that can save the story at a moment's notice. I don't think that that's going to be the case, because everyone involved with the series, from the Hagemans on down, the writing staff and the directors, they're too smart. They're too smart to serve this up as the obvious Deus Ex Machina, I think.
I definitely agree with you. I think of Murph more as like an Appa from Avatar: The Last Airbender, like very powerful, but used in a restrained sort of way. That's my hope anyway. Okay. I know you have thoughts about the reveal from the hollow footage, which I think we're going to see a little bit of every episode. So I'd love for you to talk about that, because my sort of last thought or reflection is like, how did the protostar crash? And I think your theory touches on that.
Well, I mean, going all the way back to, the 17-year flashback, with Dreadnought and the Diviner, we know that they found the ship. We know that they boarded the ship. We just don't know like the specific details. So all these things are kind of like they're coming closer and closer and closer together in terms of the big reveal. Like, why was Chakotay there? How is he there in the first place at that particular time frame? Why is this ship so important, to the point where the Diviner disavowed his own progeny of who he created in the first place for a very specific reason, to get the ship? right? That's something I think we actually kind of overlooked a little bit in our focus in the last episode. He created her because he needed her to carry on the mission. But when he found the protostar, he completely chose the protostar over her, specifically, which hurt her obviously to no end. Yeah, it's going to be difficult to try and piece this all together. More important, though, and more importantly, and something that I thought was, I don't know, it really stole my focus. Is it a full V-neck or is it a V-neck turtleneck that Chakotay is wearing? Because we need to know these things, right?
It's probably a V-neck turtleneck.
That's what I thought. I'm seeing different
based on the
shades,
history.
Gray, black, in that hologram.
Well, we're going to see it. We're going to properly see the whole scene when all the pieces come together.
Oh, it's huge.
Maybe, do I smell a poll coming to Twitter?
Polls are my thing. I love polls.
I know.
All right. So those are some great observations, actually. But let's just jump right into the morals and meanings and messages that we've kind of pulled out from this episode, because there are so many different directions that you could have taken the morals and meanings and messages, because there were so many. So let's start with you. Like, what did you see that really made an impact on you?
The first thing that really struck me, I suppose the moral meaning message behind it would be like naming, almost like claiming your destiny or like naming your place, but the ranks are starting to emerge. We've seen Dal be like, I'm the captain, I'm the captain, I'm the captain, pretty much from the pilot onward. And we have a lot of other like Rock Talk and Jankum are sort of in this engineering security officer kind of balance. Zero's taking on this Dr. Cum counselor role, which I am so excited to see them emerge more and come in their own as well. But Gwyn is called the communications officer in this episode. And I think that's a pretty big step forward in presenting like a crew defined with jobs that like us 21-year-old Star Trek fans are more used to seeing in these franchises.
Oh, you turned 21 years old too? Congratulations.
Yeah,
so did I.
I know. We can drink now. We're legal. Oh my God.
I know. Totally. Yeah.
So hot.
I'm stoked.
But I like with Gwyn, it's obvious because we've been doing the language thing since her inception. So I loved seeing this for her. I love seeing her claim her destiny, and I'm excited for all of the rest of the babies to do it too.
Well, it's neat that they have these roles kind of starting to be laid out for them, even though they're not, they're not formalized. They don't really have kind of like their Starfleet designations. It's helpful for us, for again, veteran fans to see like, okay, we got the comms officer. I think Jankum's probably security, even though he shot himself at one time. Zero's counselor.
That's true.
Maybe Rock Talk security, and then Jankum's obviously chief of engineering of a ship that has one engineer, and then you have Dal kind of like vying for the
chief engineer got a one engineer.
Yeah, he's the chief and the engineer at the same time. It's very efficient that way.
Jordy's like shaking his fist. He's rolling over somewhere. It's so bad.
So Jankum can actually like yell warp core breach or protostar. I don't want to even say that. I don't even want to say that. I'm not going to say it.
Don't hurt the baby.
Nope, don't hurt the baby.
The baby sore.
Yeah, so they all have their roles, and they're all being defined. But then again, those can lead to subversion of expectations later on. Once we start thinking, they are in these roles, but maybe they're not supposed to be in these roles. So something like that. I do like the continuation of Gwyn and linguistics. I think that's super, super cool. That was something that was really like set out since episode 1. So remember the scene where she's teaching the Caitian orphan? I know we're getting back to the Caitian orphan. I will never.
I love that you say it properly, and I'm like, nah, that's a Cadian, and it will always be a Cadian.
I'm taking my best guess at it. You're probably saying it right, but I'm doing it in a very dramatic way. Caitian orphan, and she's surrounded by the scroll of like language and music, and it really reminded me a lot of what the Crystalline people were doing with the song.
Ooh, Norm, you're so smart.
Right. And then Gwyn figured it out. Right. She said, this is harmonics and this is the way that they approach communicating. So, and it also carries over from what Gwyn learned from Zero, saying that language is interpretive, so you have to interpret the language instead of just translate the language. So again, we're kind of carrying it over from Kobayashi into this episode. That's why I think it's kind of like a two-parter. Yeah.
Interesting. The other thing that stuck out for me, I'm going to quote from The Lord of the Rings right now. Even the smallest person can change the course of the future. We we've seen that literally because we have some very tiny characters in the show. But for me, this really stuck to me. I love the image of the delta that's left on the final crystal that's returned. I don't think that's an accident. I do think we will either return to this cave or we will see a return of communication from these people. And it reminded me of, is it Star Trek Into Darkness or is it Star Trek Beyond, where they break the Prime Directive and then you see the...
Oh, it's Beyond, the little aliens.
Yeah, and you see them dealing with that. And then there's another one in one of the other movies where they're like these white painted aliens that are chasing them through the red forest, and then they draw a symbol of the Enterprise. So like it's going to be interesting to me because they technically did break the Prime Directive, how their actions here pay off in future, because you don't end on a shot like that or like have that toward your final act with it meaning nothing. So I have questions about the crystals.
Well, I mean, we know the industry well enough to know, and then I was able to obviously pick the Hagemans brothers' brains a little bit about animation and about production and about cost. So nothing in animation is wasted. Moments are never wasted. Resources are never wasted. They all cost money. They have to mean something because everything in that story has to be justified and budgeted for the final production scene. So that means something. I'm thinking going all the way back to the original series, going all the way back to A Piece of the Action, kind of like the aliens in Sigma Iosha 2. They got, because Bones left behind a communicator that became later on in another game became kind of like the catalyst for the Iosians to be able to reverse engineer Federation technology. Is that, or I could be completely overreaching and just, they'd be like, wow, that was a nice gift. Thanks. Maybe it was
become a religious object.
Yeah, I don't know, but it was a nice touch. It was a nice focus on, this is what the Federation does. The Federation, it cleans up after itself and it corrects its own mistakes. I like the kind of like the parallel journey that Gwen and Dal had at the very specific moment in that subchamber. Gwen said every crystal matters, and then Dal said we shouldn't be here. This is like, look at the change in these characters from when we first saw them to now. It's really
just
interesting.
Like blew my mind.
And remember, this is only episode 7 of 7 22-minute episodes. And we've gotten to this point with these characters where Gwen's not self-centered. She's not selfish. She wants to do right by every living being that she meets. This is her choice and her destiny. Dal is on the same kind of the side of the equation, because instead of trying to do what Nandi's doing and try and kind of like, squander away these crystals and pull a fast one on the species, he's like, this is wrong. Everything we're doing here is wrong. And I think when he said that, he was already formulating a plan to counter like every one of his Ferengi mom's plans in the end.
Literally developed morals.
Yeah, exactly. And you're seeing
in such a short time.
Yeah, I think it's just amazing. Yeah. So
my last takeaway is that trust matters. And Janeway really harps on this idea of trust, and she keeps speaking about trust throughout the episode. There's the trust between the crew, the trust between the two alien species, or the multiple alien species, as is the case, but the two parties in a first contact, the broken trust between herself and the new crew of the Protostar, like she says during her last appearance in this episode. And even though she's a hologram, it does feel a little bit like she's projecting her feelings over a betrayed trust that she feels toward Chakotay onto this like new group of people. And broken trust is really hard to reform. I think because it's a TV show, it probably will work out in the end, but we're really harping on this idea of trust. So I think the next couple episodes, we're going to be seeing that rebuilt.
Oh, getting lectured by Janeway. Did that not hit you like right in like the 13, 14-year-old going to the principal feels? Seriously.
I mean, I kind of loved it because she's amazing.
Yeah.
Right. And you want her to look in the eye, and expect better of you, but also truly devastating.
Oh, I was just like, I'm sorry, Captain Janeway. I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
I'm like,
I didn't mean to. I didn't know.
please don't tell my parents. I felt like Harry Kim. Like, please don't put this on my permanent record.
Well, if you were Harry Kim, you'd be the highest ranked person on the ship, so you'd be in good shape.
Still as ensign, I know. Wah, wah, wah. So the final scene between Gwen and Dal, I've always felt like their journey is like a mirror of each other, a mirror part of each other, because there's the final scene between them was very telling and very emotional and very exposing. Dal was betrayed by Nandi, like his only parent, or the only parent that he's ever known. And Gwen was betrayed by the diviner, the only parent that she's ever known. But the biggest lesson that I came away with from that scene is what Gwen tells Dal in the end. She said, you learned who your true friends are, the ones willing to go along with you no matter how foolish it seems. Never take that for granted. So I always love going back to, your idea of the found family here, because in this episode, Dal learned more about being a true leader and a friend than he did in Kobayashi per se. There's a thing in the Kobayashi Maru, there's a thing to be beaten. There's a thing to be won, right? There's an achievement to be unlocked. But in this episode, he felt the cost of his mistakes. He felt it at the ground level, the broken trust with his crew, the aliens that were in pain, and then obviously Nandi, who has completely betrayed him every step of his life. So he felt that with real-time consequences, which is why I think that this was, again, like the coda, if you will, not Voyager coda, but the coda of Kobayashi. That's why I like these two as a two-parter.
I love that. It's very much like a spiritual sequel versus a best of both worlds, part 1 and part 2.
Exactly. I always am reminded in these moments, say where Kirk and Saavik were talking about the Kobayashi Maru in the Genesis cave, and he said it's a test of character. I think that's where he said it, or maybe it was in the it was in the turbo lifts, on the Enterprise. It's not about winning or losing. It's about how you handle it moving forward. It's a test of your character, and there's no right or wrong answer. This was his real Kobayashi Maru moment. There was no right or wrong answer. It's how he moves forward from here. And I thought that was really brilliantly done. Okay, Ashley, that was heavy stuff. Heavy.
I got the vapors.
I got the vapes. Deep breath.
Vapors.
We always wrap things up with like one final morals, meaning, or message, or one final big idea. So what did you come away with? One last idea, something that maybe it wasn't as heavy as a morals, meanings, or message, but something that you maybe thought was fun, or maybe thought like maybe the younger viewers could come away with too.
I feel like I've trotted out a lot of truisms here, but they are often story threads. And that is, for this week, honesty is the best policy. You're going to hear that a lot growing up, but that doesn't make it any less true. The problems, I said the problems of this issue, the problems of this episode all arise from Dal's complete unwillingness to be honest with his crew, his friends, his family, his colleagues, however you want to look at them. They are a unit that has to be working together. It's very similar, as you pointed out earlier, to sort of Gwen slow coming around to accepting that she deserves to be a part of this crew and that she isn't the person that her father is. Dal may not have known what Nandi's true expectations were, but he certainly does know that she's tricky. He doesn't know that she sold him out. But had he just told his crew the real focus of their mission and that it was the crystals, they probably could have talked him out of it, out of stealing an entire species of innocent beings. Like, this episode would not have existed if everyone had just been above board and everybody had been honest. And I think that that's going to shape these characters going forward. And it's something that we all spend the rest of our lives learning as well.
Yeah, something that we maybe glossed over a little bit, I think, was how comfortable Gwen finally is now with the crew, like it's chasing after like the transporter pie. I think that that just her overall demeanor and Ella's performance and her voice is different. It's not as defensive and it's not as protective, or it's not as, there's something lighter and a lot more, I wouldn't say comedic, but definitely
at ease, maybe casual. Yeah.
And I mean, do you think that now it's finally earned? Do you think that maybe
sure?
Okay, because I don't think it was too much of a jump.
I think if it had been episode 2, it would have seemed strange, particularly for this character. But I'm also glad that it didn't take the whole first season to get here, because that would have also been like a little bit of a bummer.
Yeah.
I want to look up really quick the voice casting, the voice direction, to give them kudos as well for informing how all of this played out. So tell me your wrap up while I do some cursory Googling.
So there's an obvious kind of good versus bad morals here. That's super easy to see. You know why? Because Ferengi are involved. And when you have Ferengi involved with pretty much any story, you're going to see kind of like the extremes of treachery, of disloyalty, of capitalism, all the above, everything in between, and the rules of acquisition. Rule of acquisition number 21, never place friendship above profit. Okay, so this is what I love about the Ferengi culture. They tell you exactly how not to be when it comes to making good moral choices. Right? Their rules of acquisition definitely work for them, but they are a roadmap of how to not be a good person. When Nandi ripped the crystals from the vines, I mean, look at what happened. Look at what happened to Dal when he hid the truth from his crew. Like you said, the crew, he was supposed to have this learned experience with Spock and the Kobayashi Maru scenario, but at that moment, it just didn't settle correctly with him at that moment. And to be honest with you, I thought that Terra Firma was like the most gorgeous episode that I've seen to date, with the swirling sands and the way that the harmonics form the caves, the light song at the bottom, the crystalline aliens. I think that it's easily one of the most gorgeous animated episodes I've ever seen, probably one of the most gorgeous episodes I've ever seen in Star Trek, period. There was something so serene about it all. And
I want to live on this planet.
Oh yeah,
100%.
It's like Dune meets Lord of the Rings elves, right? You know.
Yes.
Yeah, like the Fremen and say, like the Woodland elves or Lothlorien. They were all kind of like chilling out and like sharing like architectural secrets.
Ooh, I love that. So my Google is done. Hat tip to Brooke Chalmers, our voice director. Because directors also really inform performances. So I want to give her kudos as well for the guidance of these characters' arcs, because it was really great in this episode in particular. Okay.
Very, very good. Thank you, Brooke. And thank you, Ashley. Great show. What do you say we bring this one home?
Oh, we've reached the end of our show. So sad. But so also thank you everyone for joining us here on Mission Log Prodigy. If you have enjoyed our show, and why wouldn't you? Please make sure that you like, share, and subscribe to our Mission Log Prodigy playlist on the Roddenberry Entertainment YouTube channel, or find us on your podcast catcher of choice. Mission Log Prodigy is produced by Roddenberry Entertainment, executive producer Rod Roddenberry. Our website and your opportunity to comment and connect with us is missionlogpodcast.com. And if you would like to support Mission Log directly, you can do so, and why wouldn't you want to, at patreon.com/missionlog.
Thank you, Ashley. And thank you, everyone, for taking the time to be with us. And we look forward to covering the few episodes that we have left before we go into the next break. But we're going to savor them as we savor every episode. We're going to enjoy every second of every single frame that is produced. And we are going to be here for it on Mission Log Prodigy here on the Roddenberry YouTube Entertainment channel and the podcasts for your podcasters of choice. And this is something that I love saying at the end of every episode. And now it's time for our very special incoming transmissions.
Receiving listener communications. Message playback begins.
Hey, what's your first name?
Dietrich.
How old are you?
3.
You're 3 years old. Did you like the episode?
Yeah, almost all of it.
Almost all of it, okay. What was your favorite part of the episode?
Them taking back the crystal.
Taking back the crystal? What did you say when they returned the crystal?
The fairy.
Oh, what did you think? You said the fairies got their power back?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what he called the aliens, the fairies. What was the lesson that you learned from the episode?
I don't know. Can you tell me what the lesson is?
Well, one of the things we talked about was that we shouldn't take something from somebody without asking first, right?
Yeah.
And if we know that something is hurting another person, we should stop doing it immediately.
Yeah.
Are those good lessons for us to remember? Yeah.
What's your name?
Rook.
Rook? How old are you, Rook?
6.
6. All right. Did you like tonight's episode?
Yes.
Okay. What was your favorite part?
When they put the crystal back.
You like it?
With the beam.
Oh, cool. You like it when they beam the crystal back in at the end?
Yes.
All right. What did you learn from tonight's episode?
Maybe not go at planets when no one explored it yet.
Yeah, like if people aren't ready for you,
Yeah.
just let them be.
Yeah, one person should just go down there. They should put a rover.
Oh, like we do on Mars?
Yeah.
Okay. You think we should follow the rules, and maybe the rules are there for a reason?
Yeah.
Okay.
My name is James.
You're how old?
I'm 6 years old.
Did you like the episode?
I love the episode
What was your favorite part?
when the Ferengi bit him.
And what did you learn?
You never trust a Ferengi.
What about Quark? Can we trust Quark on Deep Space Nine?
Yeah?
Sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes.
This is a Roddenberry podcast. For more great podcasts, visit podcast.roddenberry.com.